The day of my husband's funeral should have been about mourning, about honoring the man I had shared my life with. Instead, my daughter-in-law, Tiffany Albright, turned it into a theater of humiliation. Her sharp voice pierced the quiet of the chapel, cutting through the heavy silence like a blade. Really, mother-in-law? You came to your own husband's funeral in that cheap little dress? How utterly embarrassing. You look like a beggar. All eyes in the room swiveled toward me. I stood in my carefully chosen black gown, simple, timeless, and intentionally understated. To Tiffany, however, it was nothing but proof of my supposed lack of taste. What she didn't know was that this cheap dress had cost me $80,000. Please, Tiffany, this isn't the time, my son Marcus muttered, trying to quiet her. But she wasn't finished. No, Marcus. Someone has to say it. I work in luxury fashion. I can spot real quality from a mile away. And that, she jabbed a manicured finger in my direction, came straight off a clearance rack. Your mother has no sense of style. Her friends Candace and Naomi nodded eagerly beside her, whispering their agreement, feeding the gossip like vultures. Around us, the quiet murmurs of the other guests turned into a low rumble of judgment. I didn't respond. My hands rested gently together, my face calm, though inside me a storm brewed. Rage, hot and sharp, burned beneath my composed exterior. On this day of grief, this woman had chosen to belittle me, not realizing I was the very owner of the brand she worked for as a lowly sales associate. Tiffany wasn't done. Poor Elias, she said with dramatic pity. He must be rolling over in his grave, knowing his wife couldn't even bother to dress decently for his last farewell. What a disgrace for the family. I felt my eyes water not from sorrow this time, but from fury I had held back for far too long. Still, I kept my role as the fragile widow, the target of her cruelty. She leaned toward Marcus with theatrical flair. Honestly, when we have children, I pray they don't grow up to be anything like your mother, so plain, so utterly basic. Her little audience giggled. Candace piped in. She's right, Tiff. I sell clothing too. And that dress couldn't have cost more than $100. If only they knew the pearl buttons on my gown alone were worth $500 each, but Tiffany basked in her own performance. Exactly, Candace. No class at all. At my boutique, we cater to real women, women of elegance. Not, she waved her hand dismissively at me. This, Marcus shrank into silence as usual, unwilling to confront his wife. My daughter Belle finally placed a gentle hand on mine. Mom, please don't listen to her, she whispered, but I needed to hear every word. Every insult Tiffany spewed dug her own grave deeper. At last, she turned back to me with a false smile. Mother-in-law, it's not your fault. You were simply born without good taste. But don't worry. Next time you need something appropriate for an important event, I'll happily lend you something from my wardrobe. Consider it charity. Her friends praised her for her kindness, mistaking arrogance for generosity. I smiled softly, my voice trembling with the quiet resignation. Thank you, Tiffany. That's very thoughtful of you. She beamed, believing she had won, completely oblivious to the truth that I owned 17 boutiques, 3 textile factories, and held a fortune worth over $100 million. The very job she clung to was mine to give or take away, and her dismissal papers were already signed. Waiting in my private office, Tiffany, flushed with her own arrogance, wasn't content with mocking my dress. She raised her voice once again, as if she were delivering some grand lecture. You see, Marcus, this is exactly why education and ambition are so important. Some people are content with mediocrity, and look how that turns out. We must never let our children grow up like this. She gestured openly toward me, using my grief as her stage prop. The soft applause and approving murmurs from a few guests confirmed that she thought she had won. My husband's farewell had become her platform for self-importance. Inside, my fury simmered. Elias, my beloved husband, had always warned me about this very thing. Serafina, he'd say, people will mistake your kindness for weakness. The day I'm gone, you must never let them walk over you. That day had come. After the funeral, I climbed into my modest Honda Civic, the one everyone believed was my only car. To the world, I was a poor, aging widow. No one knew about the Bentley, the Mercedes, or the Porsche resting in my private garage. No one knew the truth, and that was exactly how I intended it to stay for now. At home, I slipped off my $12,000 custom-made pumps, the very ones Tiffany claimed looked like flea market finds. I poured myself a glass of Bordeaux, a vintage bottle worth $5,000. Outwardly, I was a woman who bought boxed wine at the supermarket. Inwardly, I savored luxuries my daughter-in-law couldn't even imagine. The phone rang. It was Belle. Mom, I'm so sorry for what Tiffany said today. It was cruel, unforgivable, and at Dad's funeral of all places. Don't worry, sweetheart, I replied, my tone weary. I'm used to her comments, but it's not right. Marcus should never let her treat you that way. No, Belle, please don't stir trouble in their marriage. Let things be. But deep down, I knew trouble was already brewing. Tiffany had no idea that the job she clung to was mine to control. And the time had come to remind her of that. I walked into my hidden study, a secret room behind a bookshelf that even my children didn't know existed. The walls held the truth of who I really was, contracts for my companies, financial records, ownership documents, and most importantly, the personnel files of all my employees, including one for Tiffany Albright. Her record was less than spotless: 3 warnings for lateness, 2 complaints from clients about her attitude, and a supervisor's note describing her unjustified air of superiority. Perfect. I picked up my private phone and dialed Janice, my trusted HR director of 15 years. Miss Coleman, she answered, her voice warm with sympathy. I'm so sorry for your loss. Thank you, Janice. But I need you to handle something delicate tomorrow. Of course. Tell me what you need. Review the last 6 months of Tiffany Albright's performance. Document everything. She has shown a lack of respect for customers, and that is something I will not tolerate. Janice understood immediately. Should I prepare papers for disciplinary action? Yes, have everything ready. We'll wait for the right moment to proceed. After the call, I sank into my Italian leather chair and let the weight of the day wash over me. Tiffany thought her insults had gone unpunished, that she had unknowingly declared war on the wrong woman. For 40 years, Elias and I had built our empire in silence, pretending to be ordinary. He had always been my shield, my confidant, my partner. But now, with him gone, it was time for me to defend myself with the strength and cunning of a woman who had spent half a century navigating the ruthless world of business. The very next morning, while Tiffany paraded on social media about her so-called charitable act of offering me clothes, I was sitting in my executive office, reviewing reports across my boutiques. Estelle, my loyal assistant of 2 decades, entered with coffee and a stack of documents. How are sales at the downtown store? I asked. Very strong this quarter, she said, but she hesitated. Go on. There have been issues with one employee, Tiffany Albright. Multiple clients have complained that she makes snide remarks about who can and cannot afford certain pieces. Security cameras also show her spending hours on her phone and showing up late. Yesterday, she was even caught taking pictures with merchandise she never purchased. Each word she spoke was another nail in Tiffany's coffin. Schedule a meeting with the downtown boutique's management next Friday. I told Estelle, a slow smile spreading across my face for the first time since the funeral. It's time to make some personnel changes. The days following the funeral unfolded like a carefully staged performance. Tiffany took every opportunity to remind others how generous she had been, boasting that she had offered me clothes, flaunting her supposed kindness. On Wednesday morning, Marcus called. "Mom," he began cautiously. "Tiffany told me she offered to help you with your wardrobe. I know Dad managed the finances and things must be difficult now. If you need money, I can help." How ironic. My son offering me money when the cash in my private safe could have bought his entire home outright. "That's kind of you." "Marcus," I replied softly, "but I'll manage with your father's pension." "Are you sure?" "Tiffany says your apartment looks very modest in your clothes." "Your wife is right," I interrupted gently. "I don't understand fashion the way she does." I could almost hear the pride in his voice as he defended her. "She really knows the business, Mom. She works in one of the city's most exclusive boutiques. Her supervisors trust her a lot. She might even be promoted to junior manager soon." "Interesting." Janice had said nothing about any promotion. "Unhappy for her," I murmured, though inside I already suspected Tiffany had invented the story. "Yes," Marcus continued. "Once she's promoted, we'll have more income. We can help you out more, maybe even take you shopping somewhere nice." Each word pierced me. How had I raised a man so blind to his wife's cruelty? After we hung up, I immediately called Estelle. "Check if there are any promotion plans for Tiffany Albright." Estelle's answer was swift. "None, in fact. Her supervisor, Diane, is considering putting her on probation because of repeated complaints about her behavior." "Perfect," I replied. "Do you have the reports ready?" "Yes, customer testimonials, security footage, and all documented incidents." "Good. Now I need one more thing: discreetly investigate Marcus and Tiffany's financial situation. Income, expenses, debts, the works." Estelle asked no questions. After 20 years, she knew when I asked for information. It was for a reason. By Thursday afternoon, the report landed on my desk. And it was even better than I hoped. Marcus and Tiffany were drowning in debt. Their rent alone was $3,500 a month more than Tiffany's entire salary. They owed over $40,000 in credit card debt, had a $22,000 car loan, and had even requested an advance on Tiffany's paycheck the previous month. The sweetest detail of all, they had applied for a mortgage on a $250,000 home, using Tiffany's imminent promotion as proof of future income. The dream house they were counting on was built on nothing but lies. Friday came quickly. I dressed deliberately, a tailored black Chanel suit I bought in Paris, paired with my Mikimoto pearls. Understated, but any true fashion connoisseur would recognize the quality immediately. At exactly 10 o'clock, I walked into the downtown boutique. My boutique. "Good morning, Mrs. Coleman." Diane, the supervisor, greeted me discreetly. "The managers are waiting in the office." I took my time walking through the store. The staff attended customers with warmth and professionalism. All except one. At the counter, Tiffany leaned lazily against the glass, phone pressed to her ear, laughing loudly. Her uniform was wrinkled, her makeup heavy-handed, her posture careless. "Girl, you won't believe this," I heard her say. "My mother-in-law is pathetic. Marcus told me we can take her shopping once I'm promoted." Imagine teaching a 70-year-old woman how to dress. She laughed at her own cruelty while a customer stood waiting for help. "Yeah, I work at the most exclusive boutique in the city," she bragged into the phone. "My boss loves me. She's promoting me to junior manager next week." Lie upon lie. And the funniest part, my mother-in-law actually thought her funeral dress was elegant. It looked like she bought it from Burlington. I was so embarrassed for her. The customer waiting grew tired of being ignored and walked away. Tiffany remained oblivious, still basking in her own arrogance. It was at that moment I decided to step forward. Excuse me, I said softly. She turned, startled. For a brief second, she seemed unsure, perhaps because she had never seen me dressed in anything so refined. Oh, mother-in-law, she said, quickly covering the phone. What are you doing here? I came to shop, I replied with innocent calm. Marcus gave me some money and suggested you could help me choose something appropriate. Her eyes lit up at the thought of playing fashion teacher to me. She ended her call and slipped into her usual condescending smile. All right, mother-in-law. First, we need to set a budget. How much did Marcus give you? Things here aren't cheap. It's not like the bargain shops you usually go to. $500, I lied. Tiffany laughed aloud. 500? Oh my God, you can barely afford a pair of earrings here with that. But fine, let's see what we can do. She led me straight to the accessories section, the cheapest corner of the store. Look at these scarves. They're $200 each. See the quality? This is what real elegance looks like, not those rags you normally wear. She held up a silk scarf from my own spring collection from last year. I have personally overseen every detail of its design. It's very pretty, I said softly. Of course it is. I have a good eye. That's why my bosses trust me. In fact, they're about to promote me. Just then, Diane appeared. Tiffany, Miss Coleman is waiting for you in the office, she said. Tiffany froze. Miss Coleman, my boss. She's here. Yes, she arrived a few minutes ago. It's urgent. Panic flickered in her eyes. But I'm helping a client. I'll take care of the lady, Diane interrupted smoothly. Tiffany forced a smile at me. Mother-in-law, I'll be back in a few minutes to help you. I just have an important meeting upstairs. Of course, dear, I replied sweetly. Go handle your important matters. She hurried off, not realizing she was walking straight into her own downfall, while Tiffany rushed upstairs. Believing she was about to discuss her promotion, I remained on the sales floor, savoring the irony. She had no idea the woman she had ridiculed was the very owner of the empire she served. Diane returned to my side with a knowing look. How was her performance, ma'am? She asked in a low voice. Better than I could have hoped, I replied. She sealed her fate with her own words, and the cameras captured every moment. Shall I go up now? Diane asked. Not yet, I said with a small smile. Let her sit there, stewing, wondering why she can't find me. The nerves will do half the work for us. While Tiffany's anxiety grew upstairs, I wandered through my boutique. It gave me quiet satisfaction to see the other employees working exactly as I expected, courteous, professional, treating every client with care. Everyone, that is, except the one who had just gone upstairs. I approached a young sales associate named Chloe, who had joined the team 6 months earlier. Pretending to be a regular customer, I asked casually, Excuse me, what do you think of the young woman who was here earlier, the one with curly hair? Chloe hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. You mean Tiffany? Yes, that's her. She lowered her voice. It's not really my place to comment on coworkers. I'm just curious. She seemed very confident. Chloe sighed softly. Ma'am, I'd rather assist you personally. What can I help you find? Her diplomacy impressed me. That was the kind of professionalism I valued. Still, I pressed gently. And how do you find the work environment here? Chloe glanced toward the stairs before answering. Most of my colleagues are wonderful, helpful, and respectful. But she hesitated again. But I encouraged. Some people let the glamour of the boutique get to their heads. They start treating others as if they're beneath them, especially customers who don't look wealthy. That goes against everything we were taught in training. And what did they teach you in training? I asked. That all customers deserve the same respect and attention, no matter how they look or dress. True elegance, she added with a little smile, comes from humility and respect, not arrogance. That's what Miss Coleman always says. My heart swelled with pride. My philosophy was being carried forward by the right kind of employees. Your boss sounds like a wise woman. I said, she is, Chloe replied earnestly. Though I've never met her, everyone says she built this company from nothing with hard work and principles. Just then, Tiffany came back down the stairs, her face clouded with confusion. She had found no one waiting for her upstairs and was clearly unsettled. Mother-in-law, she said briskly, hasn't anyone served you yet? What terrible service? This young lady was very helpful, I replied, nodding toward Chloe. Tiffany gave Chloe a dismissive look. Oh, she's new. She doesn't know much. I'm the expert here. I have more experience. Chloe stepped back quietly, but I could see in her eyes she had already taken the measure of Tiffany's character. Did you meet with your boss? I asked innocently. No, she must have stepped out. Probably to tell me about my promotion. She always seeks me out for important matters. Another lie. Well then, let's continue looking at clothes for me, I said. Of course. But first, let me share my plans. When I'm promoted to manager, I'm going to make a lot of changes, especially in how we handle customers. What kind of changes? I asked. For one, I'll implement a dress code. We can't have just anyone strolling in here looking out of place. Real clients feel uncomfortable when they see people who clearly don't belong. I raised a brow. And what happens if someone doesn't meet your code? I politely suggest they shop somewhere more suited to their level. This is a luxury boutique, not a bargain mart. Her arrogance was astonishing. She led me toward the store's most expensive gowns, ironically, my own proudest designs. Look at these, mother-in-law. Gorgeous, but obviously out of your reach. They run between $5,000 and $15,000 each. She lifted one of my personal favorites, a champagne-colored dress with hand-embroidered detail. This is true haute couture. I even own a similar one, a gift from a client who adored my service. Another lie. Employees were forbidden from accepting such gifts, and I personally approved every sales record. It's lovely, I said, touching the fabric. Yes, but not for you, Tiffany replied briskly. You don't have the figure or the presence for exclusive pieces. Let's look at something more realistic. She dragged me to the clearance section, older designs marked down. She picked up a gray dress. This one's only $400. Perfect for women your age. I studied the piece. It was indeed from one of my older collections, discontinued because I deemed it below my standard. And what do you think of this dress? I asked her. Honestly, it's not much. But for someone like you, it's fine. You don't have what it takes to wear the best. Her words stung, not because of her insult, but because this shallow woman represented my brand to the world. Tiffany, I said softly, perhaps you're right about me lacking style. She smiled smugly. I'm glad you admit it. That's the first step to improvement. I tilted my head. But let me ask, what if someone looked poor but was actually wealthy? How would you treat them then? Tiffany laughed outright. That only happens in movies. Rich people don't hide their wealth. It's ridiculous. But hypothetically? I pressed. Hypothetically? If someone comes in dressed like you, they're broke. It's impossible for someone with real money to look that basic. Rich people love to flaunt what they have. That's how I know how to treat them. At that moment, Estelle entered the store quietly and approached me. Ma'am, they're waiting for you in the office, she said with a knowing smile. Tiffany frowned. Excuse me, who are you? I'm Miss Coleman's personal assistant, Estelle replied matter-of-factly. And what does my mother-in-law have to do with your boss? Tiffany demanded. Estelle turned to me, waiting for my signal. I gave her a small nod. Your mother-in-law, Estelle said clearly, is my boss. The color drained from Tiffany's face. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The silence that followed Estelle's words was thick enough to choke on. Tiffany looked at me as though she had seen a ghost, her face cycling from white to pale green. "What? That's impossible," she stammered. "You live in that tiny apartment? You drive that old Honda? Your clothes, the $80,000 dress?" I interrupted gently. "The one that so offended you at my husband's funeral? That was mine." Her eyes widened further. 80,000? She whispered, barely able to form the words. "Yes," I said calmly. "And the $12,000 pumps you called flea market junk? Also mine." Her hands trembled as she grasped the counter for balance. "But I've been working here for 2 years." "That's correct. 2 years of reports, complaints, and evidence about your behavior toward customers." Estelle smoothly pulled a folder from her bag. "Shall I read the reports, ma'am?" "Please do," I said, my voice calm but firm. Tiffany collapsed into a nearby chair. Shaking, report from March 15th, Estelle began. Customer complained that Tiffany ignored her for 20 minutes. Assuming she couldn't afford to shop here? "No, that's not," Tiffany tried to interject. Report from April 22nd, Estelle continued. "A 60-year-old client was treated with contempt and shown only clearance items, without being asked her preferences or budget." Tiffany's protests grew weaker. Report from May 8th. "Employees spent over 2 hours on her personal phone during her shift while multiple clients were left unattended." Tiffany's eyes filled with tears. I can explain. What will you explain?" I asked, finally speaking. My voice was soft but carried a weight that made her flinch. "Will you explain how you publicly humiliated me at my husband's funeral? Or perhaps how you just told me that you judge people solely on appearances?" Her tears spilled over. "Ma'am, I didn't know." "If I had known exactly," I cut in sharply. "That's the problem. Your kindness depends on who you think has money. You are only respectful when you believe someone has power over you. Tell me, Tiffany, what would you have done differently at the funeral if you'd known who I really was?" She sobbed. I never would have what? Never revealed your true nature? Never exposed the cruelty you hide behind a mask of false politeness?" "Please," she begged. "It was all a misunderstanding." "I respect you. You respected me 5 minutes ago," I said coldly, "when you told me I lacked the figure or the presence to wear exclusive clothes. That was your true opinion of your mother-in-law, the woman who raised the man you supposedly love." By now, other employees had gathered at a distance, pretending to busy themselves while listening intently. "Estelle," I said, without taking my eyes off Tiffany. "Read the most recent report." "Yes, ma'am." Report from this very morning. Employee Tiffany Albright was recorded by security cameras, speaking disparagingly about a client who turned out to be her mother-in-law while neglecting another waiting customer. Multiple violations of company policy. Tiffany's head snapped up. "How do you know about the loan?" she asked suddenly, panic etched across her face. I gave her a long, steady look. "Tiffany, I know everything I need to know about the people who work for me, especially when they marry into my family." Estelle continued, her voice steady. "Financial review shows over $60,000 in credit card debt, living expenses 3 times higher than household income, and multiple unreported salary advances." "Unreported," I repeated. "Which means you've also falsified company financial documents?" Tiffany broke down, her sobs echoing through the boutique. "Please, I can explain. I only needed the money to live beyond your means," I finished for her. "To flaunt a lifestyle you don't have while looking down on others for their supposed lack of wealth." The irony was delicious. The woman who mocked me for being poor was the one drowning in debt. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. "I'm not angry that you didn't know who I was. I'm angry about how you treated the person you thought I was, a 70-year-old widow at her husband's funeral. She sobbed harder. It wasn't my intention, not your intention to reveal your true self. I asked. I straightened, my tone once again calm and resolute. Estelle, do you have the documents ready? Yes, ma'am. Tiffany's eyes darted between us in terror. What documents? Your termination papers, Estelle replied. No. Tiffany's voice cracked. Please, I need this job. We have debts, the new house you plan to buy with money from a promotion that never existed. I asked coolly. She clasped her hands together, begging. Please, Miss Coleman. I swear I'll change. I'll be different. You'll change? I asked, my voice sharp as a blade. Tiffany, you are 32 years old. If you haven't learned basic respect for others by now, you won't learn it at all. But I'm your family, she cried desperately. Your daughter-in-law. Exactly, I said, my voice like steel. And that makes your cruelty even less forgivable? Estelle placed the folder in my hand. I opened it and held the letter up for Tiffany to see. Effective immediately, I said. You are dismissed. Tiffany's breath caught as if the words had physically struck her. You can't do this, she gasped. This is personal revenge. I let out a soft laugh. Revenge? No, Tiffany. This is business. Misreading clients, abusing work hours, falsifying documents. These are fireable offenses in any company. If anything, I've been patient with you far longer than you deserved. But I need this job, she pleaded. Marcus, I interrupted firmly, is going to learn a great many things today, including how his wife treats his mother when she thinks no one important is watching. Her tears turned frantic, her voice trembling. Please, just give me one more chance. I'll do better, I promise. You've had 2 years of chances, I said, my tone even but unyielding. And you had the ultimate chance at the funeral, when you could have chosen kindness instead of cruelty. That was who you really are, Tiffany. Cruel when you believe there are no consequences. Estelle, I added, call security. Tiffany jolted upright, panic flaring. No, wait. It can't end like this. I'm family. Family behaves with respect, I said coolly. You broke that the moment you humiliated me in front of everyone I loved. She clasped her hands in desperation. Think of Marcus. If you take my job, you'll ruin our marriage. I raised a brow, incredulous. I'll ruin your marriage? Tiffany, you ruined it the day you mocked your husband's mother at his father's funeral. Her voice cracked. He'll hate me. He won't understand. Oh, he'll understand, I assured her. Especially when he sees the recordings. Every word you said about me, every cruel laugh, every false claim about your promotion, Estelle's calm voice cut in. Security is on the way, ma'am. Perfect, I said, never breaking eye contact with Tiffany. You have about 5 minutes to clear your locker and hand in your badge. She shook her head wildly. This is an abuse of power. You're targeting me because you don't like me? My voice hardened. Abuse of power? Tiffany, you abused power the moment you used a 70-year-old widow as your punchline, simply because you thought you could. What I'm doing now is holding you accountable. At that moment, Chloe, the young sales associate, approached hesitantly. Ma'am, is there anything you need? Yes, Chloe, I said gently. I want you to pay close attention. This is why we treat every customer with the same respect, no matter how they look. Tiffany glared at me through her tears, hatred flashing in her eyes. You're going to use this as a lesson? Exactly, I replied calmly. Your behavior will serve as a perfect example in every future training session, what not to do. That's humiliating, she cried. Humiliating? I laughed softly, without humor. Tiffany, you humiliated me at my husband's funeral. in front of my children, my friends, my community. You did it gleefully. Consider this a fraction of what you gave me. Diane, I called to the supervisor who had been observing quietly, document this incident for the other branches. Let everyone learn from it. Yes, ma'am, Diane said firmly. Tiffany turned desperately to her. Diane, please, you know I'm a good worker. Tell her. Diane shook her head, her expression a mix of pity and disappointment. Tiffany, I warned you many times about how you treated customers, especially older women. But I never imagined. Never imagined what? I pressed. That those women might deserve respect. That they might be more powerful than they appeared. Tiffany opened her mouth but had no answer. I finished her silence for her. You thought you could mistreat people because you believed they had no voice, no influence, no value. That is who you are, Tiffany. Just then, 2 uniformed security guards arrived. Miss Coleman? One asked. Yes, I said firmly. Please escort Miss Albright to gather her belongings. She is no longer employed here. Tiffany's shoulders sagged as she turned toward the back room, escorted by security. But before she reached the lockers, she spun around to face me one last time. What are you going to tell Marcus? She demanded, her voice sharp with desperation. The truth, I answered simply. Every word of it. He'll see the recordings, the reports, the documents. He will know exactly who his wife is. He won't care. She shouted, her voice cracking. He loves me. He won't care about any of that. He won't care that you humiliated his mother at his father's funeral. I asked coldly. He won't care that you lied about your job, about a promotion, about your finances. He won't care that you dragged him into debt with your fantasies of grandeur. This time, she had no reply. Tiffany said nothing as she stuffed her belongings into a box, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I turned to the employees who had gathered nearby, all of them watching with wide eyes. I want you to understand something very clearly, I told them, my voice steady. In my boutiques, every customer is treated as if they are the most important person in the world, regardless of how they look or how much money they appear to have. The staff nodded solemnly. Do you know why? I asked that Chloe, timid but brave, raised her hand. Because it's the right thing to do? Exactly, I said with a faint smile. Because it's right, but also because we never truly know who is standing before us. Double quotes, another employee whispered, like you today? Yes, I answered, like me today. But more importantly, like anyone who walks through those doors. Everyone deserves dignity, kindness, and professionalism. Estelle leaned in quietly. Ma'am, would you like me to schedule a meeting with Marcus for this afternoon? Yes, I replied. It's time my son heard the truth. Tiffany, overhearing this, dropped her box and ran toward me, panic written across her face. No, please don't tell Marcus anything. Let me explain it to him. Explain it with more lies? I asked coldly. No, she sobbed. I'll tell him everything. The truth about the job, the debts, the promotion, everything. I shook my head. Too late. You had 2 years to be honest. You had a chance to apologize after the funeral, but every time you chose to lie. Now the truth will come from me. The guard stepped in, escorting her toward the exit. She clutched her box of belongings like it was her last lifeline. At the door, she turned and shouted, This isn't over. I'll fight this. Please do, I replied calmly. It will be interesting to see how you explain your behavior to a judge. A judge? She repeated, her face draining of color. Oh yes, I said smoothly. Defamation. Hostile work environment. Fraud on company documents. I have more than enough evidence to keep you busy in court for years. The guards led her out, her protests fading down the hallway. Silence settled over the boutique. The employees looked at me with a mixture of awe, respect, and perhaps a touch of fear. Well, I said at last, breaking the tension, I think we've all learned something valuable today. Diane stepped forward. Miss Coleman, should I call HR to start the replacement process? Yes, I said, but make sure the new hire goes through a stricter interview process, especially regarding values and customer service. Of course, she nodded, double quotes, and Diane, I added. Promote Chloe immediately. Her professionalism today was exemplary. The young woman blushed, her eyes shining. Thank you, Miss Coleman. Don't thank me yet, I said kindly. With a promotion comes responsibility. Earn it every day. I left the boutique that afternoon with a curious mix of emotions. The revenge I had been quietly planning was complete. Tiffany had been unmasked and removed. But now came the harder part, facing Marcus and explaining why I had destroyed his wife's career. At 5 o'clock sharp. Marcus arrived at my apartment, his face drawn with worry. He had received my call hours earlier, urging him to come. Mom, he said as soon as he stepped inside. Tiffany came home in tears, saying she was fired. She swears you had something to do with it. Tell me it isn't true. Sit down, Marcus, I said softly. What I'm about to tell you will change a lot of things. He sank onto the same sofa where he'd once curled up as a child, where he'd sought comfort and advice as a teenager. Now at 35, he looked lost. Mom, he said, his voice cracking, Tiffany told me something insane. She said you own the boutique where she worked. That can't be true, right? I took a deep breath. Marcus, for your entire life, I've hidden the truth about our family's wealth. But it's time you know who your mother really is. I stood and walked toward the bookshelf. With a gentle push, the hidden door swung open, revealing my private study. Marcus gasped. His eyes darted across the walls lined with contracts, financial records, and photographs of boutiques. What is all this? He whispered. This, I said, is the empire your father and I built over the last 40 years. Marcus stepped into the study as though he had crossed into another world. His eyes scanned the polished mahogany desk, the framed contracts on the walls, the photographs of grand openings and fashion shows. He looked utterly stunned. Mom, he whispered, we're rich? Yes, Marcus, I said gently. Very rich. We have been for most of your life. His brow furrowed as he tried to make sense of it. But why? Why did we live like we were ordinary? Why didn't you ever tell us? Because your father and I wanted you and Belle to grow up with real values, I explained. We wanted you to know the meaning of hard work, humility, and respect. Money corrupts when it comes too easily. We didn't want that for you. He sank into a chair, running a hand through his hair. I can't believe this. All this time, I said softly, you have the chance to show your true character without money clouding your judgment. Your father knew the truth, of course. He was my partner in everything we built. We decided we would only reveal it when the time was right, when our children showed they were ready to handle the responsibility. Marcus stared at me, torn between admiration and hurt. And what does this have to do with Tiffany being fired? I handed him the thick folder Estelle had prepared. Everything. She worked in one of my boutiques for 2 years, and in that time, she repeatedly mistreated customers, judging them solely on appearance. That can't be true, Marcus said quickly, his instinct to defend her rising. It is, I said firmly. Read. He flipped through the pages, his expression shifting as he read each report, how Tiffany ignored clients, belittled older women, and spent hours on her phone while customers waited. This must be some kind of misunderstanding, he muttered weakly. A misunderstanding? I pulled out another report. Is it a misunderstanding that she mocked me at your father's funeral? Called me classless? Told everyone I looked like a pauper? That was no mistake, Marcus. That was her true self. He paled. Mom, she told me she was only trying to help you. Help me? I gave a bitter laugh. You call it help when a woman calls her husband's grieving mother an embarrassment in front of the whole family. When she points and sneers at the dress you're wearing as you bury your life partner. Marcus lowered his eyes, shame written across his face. Tell me, Marcus, I pressed. Why didn't you defend me? I thought maybe she was right, he admitted quietly. My heart clenched. So you thought it was acceptable for your wife to insult your mother because you assumed she was telling the truth about my lack of class? No, he said quickly. That's not what I meant. Then what did you mean? I demanded, my voice breaking with the weight of years of silence. He had no answer. I placed another set of documents before him. Do you know what else I learned today? Tiffany has been lying about a promotion that doesn't exist. You both applied for a mortgage using that lie as collateral. He looked at me in shock. How do you know that? Because I'm a businesswoman, Marcus. When someone attacks me, I don't just sit quietly. I find the truth. I showed him the financial records credit card debts over $60,000. An apartment rent higher than Tiffany's salary, repeated salary advances. He buried his face in his hands. My God. Your wife, I said coldly, has been parading around, pretending to be wealthy while living in debt and mocking others for not measuring up to a standard she doesn't even possess. He looked up at me, broken. So what happens now?